Welcome to Reality Fighter TV. In today's video tutorial, I want to discuss a topic that I've been getting a lot of feedback on, and that topic is how can one create more power easily in any punch regardless of their size? In other words, how can I create more force irregardless of how much my body weighs or how large my body is? And that question is something that can be answered pretty easily. I also want to share and inform everybody that this video is also designed, in addition to teaching how to create more power easily, is to differentiate between the difference between an impact-oriented punch and a leverage-oriented punch. Although, in order to have an effective punch, punches are always going to have some degree of leverage and some degree of impact. But in this video, I want to make the distinction between the two, because there is a difference that this will further help educate anybody who's looking for topics on such related areas in this, surfing YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications in the corner of your screen so you can get more informed sooner on videos that may be related to the specific needs for your martial arts training. So let's go ahead and get into it and talk about how to create more power easily in any punch or strike, irregardless of your size, and explain the difference between impact-oriented strikes and leverage-oriented strikes. Okay, when it comes to developing or creating more power easily, the first thing that I want to explain is the difference between two different types of strikes: leverage-oriented strikes and impact-oriented strikes. Right? Now, I explained earlier here in the intro here that all punches and strikes that cause a knockout effect, or a shock wave that would be defined as the end result is a knockout, have some degree of impact and have some degree of leverage. Right? So the idea basically is which one is more impact oriented and which one is more leverage oriented. Right? Now, really a simple understanding of this: in order for a strike to be effective, right, the simple equation is it's got to have the mass behind it, the weight transfer behind it, which is your body weight, and it has to have the velocity behind it in order to create the force that you're looking for. Right? Irregardless of the punch. Certain punches are more leverage oriented and certain punches are more impact oriented. But the idea is you're trying to find a balance between the two. Now, with that being said, there are certain components or attributes that play a role into better impact and to greater leverage, but doesn't mean that they have to be in there. In other words, for example, somebody who's a larger piece of mass, right? Somebody who's 220 pounds as opposed to someone who's 150 pounds has a potential to create more impact or generate more force because they're a bigger piece of mass, right? Breaks to the earth in here. They potentially have more muscle. They can generate more muscle fibers, right? In a single square inch in here. They can be more stabilized in here like this. All right, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be like that in order to create more power. Right? Some people are very fast, but they're not very strong. Some people are very strong, but they're not very fast, and they're not very coordinated. Okay, so all these components, being strong, being athletic, being stabilized in here, right? Having endurance and stuff. Those things can contribute to creating more force, more power, but they don't have to be. So I want to break this down into a very simple science, and then as we go along in this video, I want to kind of use where you're at. You have to go with where you're at, right? If you're 180 pounds, 6 foot tall, that's what you have to work with, right? If you're only so strong, right, or you only think you're so strong, that's what you have to work with, okay? So you don't have to be the strongest person. You don't have to be the fastest person. You don't have to weigh the heaviest. Sometimes those things can be a hindrance. And none of those things actually replace technique and experience, right? Technique is the ultimate factor in all this, okay? And experience, right, and knowledge is also the ultimate factor. So technique and experience is the ultimate holy grail with all this. So irregardless of your size in here, I feel that this, what I'm about to share with you, can help anyone who's seeking, this kind of information. So the first thing here is, let's talk about what an impact-oriented strike in here is. Okay, the definition of an impact-oriented punch is any punch that has the right amount of mass moving at the right amount of speed, or the right rate of speed. Okay, it has nothing to do with being in position. It has nothing to do with how big and strong you are. It has nothing to do with perfect technique. In other words, you don't have to have the perfect form in here, which would be leverage, which we'll talk about. Okay, it doesn't have nothing to do with that. Okay, what it really comes down to is basically I could take my body mass in here and just slam it, right, into the target in here like this. Just kind of have any kind of action in here. I can just drive into it like this, right, and that would be a definition of just impact-oriented force. Okay, it can be one gigantic, hellacious amount of force in here, coming in here like this, okay? Or it could be a series of punches in here like this that basically have enough mass and speed behind it in order to create the effect that you're looking for. So it has nothing to do with, a jab, a cross, a haymaker, a side kick, or anything like that. It can be very artless. Okay, a common example of that would be an overhand haymaker in here, right? So basically, if I get my mass in here, right, doesn't matter how much I weigh, 180 pounds, right, and I move it and I surge it to the target in here, right, and I get the arm, the weapon, going in front of it in here, or with it in here, as long as this thing is traveling at a high rate of speed and has the body mass behind it on impact in here, I'm going to create an impact, oriented technique in here, oriented force, right? I don't have to have the perfect leverage in here. In other words, I could swat this strike in here like this, right, and cause a considerable amount of impact in here. And that's very often what an overhand strike does, right? It kind of creates a swatting type effect, and I got my mass moving very fast, and I have the distance that allows me to pick up the speed in here, right? So I got my body mass pushing off the earth, right? I have the distance for my arm to pick up the velocity needed in here, and I can literally hit anywhere along in here with my fist. I could even hit with my forearm in here like this, right? I could even hit, with my shoulder in here, and still, that would be a definition of impact-oriented force. Okay, I don't even have to be stabilized to the ground. I could be flying in the air and do the same thing, right? And it's going to create an impact-oriented strike in there. Okay, so that's a really simple definition of an impact-oriented strike. Okay, now if boxing glove, you have gloves on, right, that's going to dissipate or take away some of the impact in here because you have a cushion on your hand. Okay, so if this is for sport-oriented purposes and you're using boxing gloves or 4-ounce mixed martial arts gloves in here, there's going to be some impact, dissipation going on in here. If it's a bare fist, right, there's a much more chance of creating damage, with one, irregardless of the form in here like this, just because you have solid bone, hitting somebody in the cranium in here. Okay, so basically, an impact-oriented strike is just moving my mass, right? Moving with speed in here like this, right? I could take a hammer fist in here, right? And do the same freaking thing, okay? Right? Hammer fist in here doesn't quite have the leverage behind it, which we'll talk about later in this video, right? As like maybe a rear cross in here, because I don't have the bone structure behind the technique, right? So some impact, or some strikes that have a lot of impact don't even have the leverage behind it, right? The mechanical components that brace the body and the technique in the right position at the right point of impact in here that actually makes the strike, amplifies the strike. So if you have the right amount of distance, and you can get that rate of speed going in here, and you're taking your body mass, and if you even hit, with a more of a mechanical, leverage-oriented striking here as opposed to like a swatting type action, well, that's just going to amplify the amount of force that you're going to create. Okay, so I hope you guys understand that an impact-oriented punch doesn't have to have perfect form. Right? I don't have to be in perfect balance, right? I could be leaning away in here like this and squatting here like that, and just just the amount of velocity, and the mass behind the technique coming in here, right? It's a lot of times enough to do the damage, and that's why, in like sport fighting, for example, certain fighters, you'll see a knockout come with a, what I would call an artless haymaker in here like this. Because, even though it doesn't really have, a rhyme or reason how to get there, right? The arm is just flailing here. There's a ton of weight transfer coming on in here, and there's a ton of velocity. It's like throwing a baseball, right? If I try to throw a baseball this close to the target in here, I don't care how good my form is, I'm probably not going to get a whole lot of force built up because I just don't have the distance. However, though, I can get some kind of force built up better if I put my body in a stronger position, and I have some kind of mechanical functional leverage behind it, which is a leverage-oriented strike, which we'll talk about next in here. So let's go ahead and talk about what a leverage-oriented strike is, and then explain kind of why we need both a leverage and an impact, and kind of how to use them differently in certain fighting situations. So let's go ahead and talk about that. Okay, a leverage-oriented punch is a little more sophisticated, a little more complex than just kind of create, just pure raw impact. A leverage-oriented punch has several components that need to come into play in order for it to be effective. First and foremost, and irregardless of your body size, right, your weight or your, type, whether you're, ectomorph or an endomorph, irregardless of that in here, in order for the leverage-oriented strike to work, okay, I have to be stabilized to the ground, right? I have to be braced to the earth so I have something to push off of, right? So whether you're using, surging type of force when you're moving your body weight forward, or locomotion type of force, right? Or you're using rotational force in here, right? Or you're using some kind of, inclination type of force in here, irregardless of those body directional forces, you have to be stabilized to the ground. If you're not stabilized to the ground, what's going to happen is that even though if you have, let's say, perfect technique, and let's say, I'm out of alignment somewhere, right? Let's say I don't have my back is too straight, right? And I step in and I throw a left rear cross in here. What's going to happen is that the force is going to be dissipated through the weak point of my body, and I'm going to have a weakness, a give in here in my body, right? So if my back is too straight in here like this, right? So my body is straight up and down on the line of gravity in here, so the counter force, right, in here, right, is going to drive me backwards in here, right? Same thing if I hit a heavy bag. Right, so if a guy's moving at you in here like this, right, and you don't hit him hit him in the right spot, right, this punch could give, and therefore you're leaking leverage. So wherever your body, right, is weak on the point of impact, right. So I punch my back too straight like this, right, or maybe I throw the technique in here, and I don't hit, and let's say I hit at a poor point of impact in here, right? What happens is that the skeletal muscular structure in here doesn't get aligned to become a solid unit on the point of impact, okay, or even before the point of impact in here, and therefore I have a collapse in here like that, right? Right? So, like, that's why things like hammer fits and back fits, right, often won't have that driving type of impact or, driving force in here, when they're in real close. And no matter how stable I am with my body here, I just can't get the leverage in here like this. So my body's stabilized, but I'm not hitting at the right point at impact, so therefore I don't have the force that I need in here. Okay, so certain strikes I have more leverage than others just by the mechanics of them, right? So we're going to say that like driving type or pushing type punches in here, right, vertical straight punches, right, and horizontal punches, right, even some degree of an uppercut in here, and even some degree of a hook, right, have a lot more leverage behind it because the body mass, right, the body mass, right, is behind it bracing. In other words, there's no give in my body, assuming my body is stabilized, and the limb, the arm, the weapon is all in a structural alignment, right, from the point of conception all the way to its destination. Therefore, when I make contact in here, I can brace along that line. Okay, that's not true in something like a hammer fist or a back fist, where there is leverage in there, but the leverage is coming through more of my body positioning, right? So a hammer fist is going to be the most effective out here, right? Out here like this, or a back fist, as opposed to in here, it's not, because I just can't, there's no bone structure behind the technique as opposed to like a jab, right, or a cross or something like that. So that's why with like a cross, I can get a lot of leverage, or good leverage, both when my body is stabilized and even if I'm in close range, because I have the bone structure, right, behind it in here like this. Okay, not true with a hammer fist or a back fist, right, or even an elbow strike, right? I got my weight kind of behind the technique in here, and I can, I can brace for it. When I throw a hook punch, right, my lead leg is becoming my bracing leg for a moment in here. So all the force is being channeled through the arm, right, this way in here like this. So if my body's out of alignment in here like that, right, it's going to give somewhere, right, and therefore I leak leverage. So I can be moving very quickly in here and throw all my weight into the technique, but if I hit at a wrong point of impact, fist is bent, elbow is down, right, body's angled in a weird position in here like this, foot's not in the right spot, back's too straight, whatever, leaning away in here, right, this tech and the target is braced in here, right, this may just give, and therefore that's why you see strikes that don't have any effect. So with that being said, there's several components that have to be used when delivering a technique in order to create more power easily. Right? You need some degree of impact, and you need some degree of leverage. So let's go ahead and kind of talk about some of the components that go into that, irregardless of what strike you're trying to apply it. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about some of the components that come into play here when trying to bring both impact and leverage together. Because the idea is to get those two ideas to harmonize together, right? Remember I said earlier that any strike, irregardless of its form, its mechanics, right, its trajectory, always have some degree of leverage and impact behind it, assuming that it's a knockout strike in here. So if you hit somebody, with a swatting type of technique and they fall down and don't get up, right, it's, impact oriented with some leverage behind it, right? It's, or vice versa. So the question is which one are you trying to demonstrate, okay? However, again, irregardless of your body weight or size in here, you need to figure out how to create the best power and force for your application, irregardless of your size, weight, or even gender. Okay? So let's talk about a couple components. First and foremost, one of the most important principles that come into play with any strike in here, right? Assuming that this fight is upright, is you have to be stabilized for the most part, right? I mean, obviously you're going to be moving around in here, but the trick is that you need to learn how to be stabilized right on the point of impact. So you can be bouncing around in here like this, and all of a sudden I want to throw a rear cross in here and I go like this, right? Well, that's not going to be a very effective leverage-oriented strike because I wasn't able to move my mass to the target because it was up in the air for a split second, right? However, though, if I'm bouncing around in here, right, and then I, stabilize, right, now it has impact behind it because I have something to push off the earth, right? So there's three ways to kind of get body to get power, right, using your body. Actually, there's four ways. The first way to get power through weight transfer is I can rotate my body to the target, right? This is obviously common in hooks, right? So I brace my body here and I torque my body into a technique like this, right? Okay, so it's moving away from the center of rotation, right? Pretty simple, everybody knows that. My body's stabilized in here, right? How far you move away from the target creates greater distance for you to pick up velocity, right? It's like swinging a baseball bat from back here as opposed to trying to bunt. More distance, potentially more speed, okay? The more mass that you can put into the technique, in other words, the more you can take your body and throw it into the target first. In here, in other words, the body is ahead of the technique, the more mass you have behind it, okay? Assuming it's moving at a high rate of speed. You could have a lot of mass, be a heavyweight fighter, right? Get yourself in the right spot, but you're moving very slow, right? Like this, even though there was a lot of penetration in there, right? That was a pushing type of strike, right? A lot of functional leverage, right? I can get right here like this in this thing, and I can push this thing over. If I can do that, that means my body, for the most part, is in the right spot. If I put my body in the wrong spot, no matter how big and strong I am, let's say that I put my leg like this, and I throw the technique here, right? What's going to happen is I can't brace for this impact, therefore the force is going to leak out my body in here somehow, and I'm going to become destabilized. So I have to be stabilized when I deliver that technique, okay? Even if I'm moving around for a second here, just for a moment, boom, my body stabilizes to make that thing work, okay? So rotational force with body stabilization, right, is a major component in here, right? The second major component to having to create more power in your strikes is that I have to be able to, if I can't rotate my body to the target in here because I'm too far away, all right? Okay, so if I try to rotate from here, I'm going to miss, okay? Is I have to be able to either use some degree of locomotion or some degree of inclination, right? So locomoting would be putting my body in kind of a sprint position in here and then stepping towards the target and transferring my weight, okay? So if it's going to be, if I'm going to have leverage behind it, my punch, if we're taking a straight punch in here, has to be timed just right, okay? So I have to hit to where my bone structure is basically in almost a locked out position, right? Not fully locked out, right? We don't fully lock out for martial arts in here. We'll hyperextend something. But almost to the point where my joints and my skeletal structure become locked. And my body is braced behind this drive leg in here, right? In here like this. So I can be bouncing around in here, moving around, my hands all over the place, deflecting kicks and step in, and I'm braced on this impact in here like that, okay? So I can locomote my body, but I got to be braced on the point of impact. Okay, I don't even have to have my hands in the best position. I can have my hands down here, not the best place to be, right? And most times, unless it's for a specific strategy, bring my hands up, boom, and I hit at the right point of impact. My body's braced for that force in here. So my body again has to be stabilized. Okay, and if I can't get there through rotation because I'm too far away, then I have to locomote. So I have to put my spine, right, my big muscles of my legs in the right position to brace for that impact in here like this. Okay, so that's the second way I can kind of generate some power. The third way to generate some power is through inclination, okay, which means I can rock my upper body into the target, right, without moving my legs. So I could be planted in here again, and I could just rock and deliver some force in here, okay, right? Not the strongest type of force, but often sometimes that's what I need, right? I can lean in a little bit and deliver a technique, or I can lean away and deliver a technique in here. So inclination in here, but again, I have to be stabilized, right? So if I lean back in here like this, I'm never going to reach them. I have to angle my body into the technique in here and hit again at the right point of impact, right? If I lean in or if I step in and I hit here, right, I've lost the leverage. So this part of my body may be in the right spot, right, but my arm is out of alignment, so therefore my triceps and shoulders have to combat that, and that's where somebody who's bigger and stronger and can create more muscle contraction or recruit more muscle fibers may have an advantage to doing that, right? So imagine if they were in the right spot in here, how much better that would be. So if you're not as strong, right, and you can't brace for that type of force in here, right, think about if you hit bad in here like this, what that's going to happen to you, especially with the gloves on because you got this padding in here, okay? So your leverage-oriented strikes have to hit at the right spot, meaning they have to be in the right body position, and the mechanical aspect of it is understanding, you know, where that, what trajectory, what vector you want to take that technique to take. If I try to swat with that technique and expect to hit hard, right, with leverage, right, you know, that's a you know, best case scenario. I'm relying on the last, you know, 3/4 of the punch to, you know, to make, you know, to do it here. If he moves in real close in here, I can't do that, right? That's why a lot of fighters in martial arts won't teach or demonstrate, you know, close range techniques with certain punches and stuff like that, because they can't create the leverage, or they don't want to understand how to create the leverage, or they think there's no leverage there, so they just bypass it and go to something else, right? Common example is, well, you can't hit hard and straight like this, so we'll just go to elbows and knees in here. And the answer is that's wrong. You can in here if you've got to put your body in the right spot. So this becomes a leverage-oriented technique, right? Also, you need impact. You need to have your body weight behind it, right? You need to put your body in the right spot. You need to hit right at the right spot here. If I try to hit from here, that's not going to happen, right? Okay, it's kind of like trying to do skull crushers in here. Can't do a lot of weight as opposed to bench pressing out here. All right, the final way to transfer your weight is through surge force, right? I can literally walk forward in here, right, and drive forward in here like this. I don't have to be moving very fast. All I have to do is just move my body weight to the target, and right at the right spot is drive that thing out, right? Simple way to do that. It's kind of like just pushing something in here like that. Okay? Again, my body is stabilized on the point of impact, right? I'm not going like this. My legs off the ground, okay? All right? So now that I've kind of talked to you about, you know, kind of the different 4 types of ways that kind of your body can generate power in here, let's talk about, you know, close range techniques that have leverage, you know, as opposed to, you know, long range techniques that have leverage. Let's go ahead and talk about that. All right, when it comes to leverage-oriented strikes in close range as opposed to long range, some strikes are going to offer greater leverage than others. Right now, depending upon the fighting situation, depending upon where your body's in position in relationship to your opponents in here, and the targets accessible to hit, can determine kind of what techniques that you may have to use more than you want to. Right? So for example, let's talk about close range, because these are usually the most complex, right? Close range, and when I'm in close range here, that means I can reach out and touch my adversary without having to step when I'm in a fighting stance, right? Anything from a clinching or a contact position all the way out to right here, all right? Long range would be defined as anything where I have to physically step to the target and deliver, right? Mid to long range in here. So that would be, you know, long range punches in here like this, right? Kicks in here. Even if I have to take a couple steps, right, and get into here and deliver a combination, that's, you know, a mid to long range theory in there. So close range techniques, in order for you to create more power or more power easily, right, there are some things that we have to take in consideration. First and foremost, the technique that you're choosing, okay? So in order to explain that we need to put our body, right, in a stable position here, right, on the point of conception all the way through the delivery in here like that, right? So it's got to be stabilized, right? So if I get pushed off balance, I'm going to have to stabilize in here, right? Often in grappling and stuff, when clinching, I get pushed off balance, right? Regardless of what leg goes back to catch my balance, I have to stabilize, right, and then reposition in here. So certain techniques offer a little more leverage than others, right? A lot of techniques that have no leverage in close range are going to be, like I said, your hammer fist from this plane up here like this, or your back fist, right? So delivering along this lateral plane, not going to get a lot of leverage there, right? Unless you step back, but then that would be considered a kind of a mid-range, long-range technique. I'm assuming that we can't move in here, right? But that's not true on hammer fists that come downward, right? So if I drop a downward hammer fist like kind of close to his neck and collarbone in here, right? I got impact coming on, my mass coming down, and my body is stabilized right here, right? Now if I hit with the wrong point of my arm, let's say I hit with my elbow too straight, right? That's not going to have a lot of leverage in it. Even though my weight's coming down, right? My arm's coming down very quickly in here, right? I'm gonna really be sorry in here, hyperextend my elbow. Okay, right? Or if I'm leaning back in here like this, right? In here like that, right? That's gonna take the impact out of it. So things like coming down, a double hammer fist, right? In here like that are really good in close range, right? Angling the strike a little bit, right? In here like this, right? Even into the body in here, right? Those are all good, you know, strong leverage-oriented techniques in here. Hammer fist coming in here like that, right? An elbow strike coming up in here like that, or coming down in here, right? My body's in position in here, right? Now when I say body in position, that doesn't mean that you're going to be directly on center of the person. You may have to shift off a little bit. Okay, which brings me to the next one, straight punches. Often straight punches are really neglected in close range striking, right? You'll see them a lot, you know, people hitting like this on the bag in here, right, on the focus mitts when they're working with a coach in here. But when they get into a fighting situation, right, that often kind of fails a lot, right? You see them rely on a lot of circular strikes in here, hooks, right? You know, uppercuts like in boxing a lot in here, right? In MMA, they're coming down with elbows in here, but mostly circularly oriented strikes, right? Trying to bring this cross out in here like this and try to hit, you know, ends up becoming a haymaker, and they end up overshooting in here and getting taken down because they're trying to create so much impact, right? More impact than leverage, right? I want to remind you, in close range, it's more important that you hit with accuracy and try to hit with leverage and impact that's controlled than trying to hit with just pure impact. So what does that mean, right? You'll see this a lot in MMA, right? They're in a grappling scenario in here like this, and the guy is going like this, trying to hit as hard as he can doing this, and nothing's happening, right? Well, he doesn't have any leverage, right? Got his arm way out to here, a lot of distance, right? But the mass behind it is just his ability to contract his bicep and pec. It's like how much can you do a pec fly in here, cable fly, right? Body straight up and down in here. So he's stabilized, right? But he may be stabilized because he's hanging on to the guy. He's not stabilized by his own body power, right? So you want to try to be stabilized by your own body power. So, you know, you see a lot of this, right? Or this going on in here, right? They're trying to do stuff like this. They don't have the distance to get that kind of velocity, right? They don't have the distance to kind of, to pick up, you know, acceleration in here. The only mass behind the technique is just their arm, and it maybe not be enough, right? Especially if you're tired, right? You've gone, you know, 3 rounds of grappling in here, and the next thing you know, you're trying to hit as hard as you can in close range. It's not going to happen. What would be a better solution to create leverage, if it's going to be if we're picking a close range strike in here, let's say a straight punch, is you're not going to be able to get the leverage from in close like this, right? Because you're going to leak force, right? Again, bench press analogy. You can't bench a lot of weight from here. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to move your body over a little bit. Okay, move it over off center line in here, like get your chest more in line with his shoulder and his head, right? Don't move too far away, right? And then you're gonna have to change the trajectory. So now the punch, instead of the punch coming here, right? It's coming here. It's coming in this here, and you're using rotational force as your form of weight transfer, right? So that would be basically, I'm here, you know, if you want to hang on, you can, but I would get my leg over here, move my body, stabilize it in here, get this arm up, and I would deliver from here like this. Now the punch has leverage, as opposed to trying to be here, doing something like this, okay? Trying to hook, or trying to use a ridge hand in here, all right? So even in closer ranges in here, right? Get my body in position. If it's not in position, right? Get it in position in here. Get the punch into a driving type punch in here, okay? And drive from here, right? Even if I have to shift completely over here, right? Deliver here. Bang, right? Here. From there, right? If it's going to be a hook punch, I'm not going to be able to get it with chest to chest in here, right? I'm just wasting energy. What I have to do is get my body back a little bit, sit my hips back. Okay, again, kind of angle off the center line a little bit so I can transfer my weight laterally. All right, bring this arm in position and step if I can. If I can't, then I'm going to have to just use my upper body in here, right? And just deliver it from here, boom. But my body is doing the weight transfer. My arm is moving with it or behind it in here like this, right? Even in close range, right? I can't deliver a strong punch from here, right? Unless the guy's a complete whip. I got to sit back a little bit, right? So now I'm using some rotation and a little degree of inclination in here in order to get that. Okay, so these pushing tight punches, right, have a lot more leverage, right, even in close ranges in here, if they're delivered at the right point of impact, than a lot of these circular punches in here like this, because I can't access a lot of the mass that I need to do that. Like you wouldn't do a chest fly like this to overcompensate for the lack of weight you can't do. You would drop the weight down and recruit the proper trajectory, so you recruit the proper muscle fibers that you're trying to emphasize. So you don't want to sacrifice skeletal muscular structure for leverage. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about long range techniques now. Okay, let's talk about long range strikes and creating both leverage and impact. All right, a couple things to take into consideration that are often common mistakes and just overlooks in here when delivering. Right, a lot of people when they're at long range, when they go to deliver a long range punch, are often too far away before when they start their delivery. In other words, the distance and the time it takes to get there, they often telegraph, and so their opponent moves or counters them. Or more importantly for this video, is that they don't have any, it's pure impact, right? They throw a punch, particularly a rear hand like a haymaker, from really far out, because their mindset is all about creating impact. And this technique may get there. Like I said earlier in the beginning of this video, all I need to do is just kick a guy. I can be completely off balance, right? And still come out with a knockout, right? But who wants to do that, right? So often what happens is if I do this in here and he ducks underneath it, right, I end up getting taken down because I chose to throw an impact-oriented punch that I'm way too far away at, okay? So when you're farther out in here, you have to make sure that you can cover this distance relatively quickly. That's why you need to be able to locomote, right? So you got to be careful about what techniques that you use at long range in here, right? If I can do this from out here, right, which takes a great distance, right, I certainly can step in and throw a rear cross from here. That's a shorter distance, right? And I can create, a good amount of leverage in here as well. So when you're going to deliver a technique from long range, you have to step to the target, stabilize, and then hit at the right point of impact in here in order for it to be a leverage-oriented strike, right? So like same with a kick in here, right? If I'm too far away, like this, and you see a lot of guys will throw a round kick and they'll miss, woo, and they'll spin around in here, right? Because they're not even close in here like that, right? Well, let's say that they throw the technique as a kick in here, and they're trying to reach on that base leg, and the guy blocks it, the guy grabs it, they're up on their toes in here, right? And they end up falling on their butt or something, or get taken down because they're so out of position, because their psychology is thinking, impact, I gotta use impact. No, the answer is, the impact will come through your weight transfer, and will come through your technique and being stabilized at the right time. So remember, leverage-oriented techniques don't have to be coming from way back here like this, okay? They don't have to be starting from back here. That's actually a disadvantage because he sees the whole freight train coming, right? The trick is to be close enough in here where you can reach him relatively easy with either strike in here like this. Your force will be created through the weight transfer timed with being stabilized and timed with hitting at the right point of impact in here like that. That's where your impact's going to come from long range. Okay, not from out here trying to just throw a Hail Mary and hoping that you hit him in here like that. Okay? So you want to be relatively close, so you have to control this distance in here, right? Right? So you don't want to be starting from here, right? I mean, if you're already here inside on the guy and he's already on the defensive, yeah, do whatever the hell you want, right? The closer you are, the less chance of you missing, hopefully, right? But you still got to take into consideration, you got to be accurate, right? If you're going to hit with leverage, right? I don't have to be accurate if I hit with impact, right? It could be, like that, I hit here, what the hell is that? Right? But there was enough mass behind it, enough speed to cause the damage. But a leverage-oriented strike that has enough impact to get the knockout power, or closer to the knockout power you're looking for, you have to be in the right position in here, right? Even if it takes a couple steps. So if I step, right, and I throw a hook in here, I'm better off doing that than trying to do something like this. All right? Okay? So take that into consideration when you are practicing strikes for impact or leverage-oriented. Right? Leverage-oriented, I don't have to punch through 6 inches or 12 inches. Right? All I have to do is just hit the guy quickly in here. Right? All I got to do is just get his attention in here like that. Right? Depending on what you're trying to accomplish. If I'm just trying to create a shockwave that just stuns the guy in here, there's no reason to try to be going like this on the person. Right? So you want to make sure that, when you are practicing long-range leverage-oriented techniques, that you need to be in control of yourself. Right? Get your strike to there and out and back in here like this. Right? Not trying to reach the guy and hopefully you hit him and then your mindset is all about the punch, but your mindset is totally not even connected to the recovery. Now you're out of position. Okay? So I hope that information is informative to you if you're looking for something of that nature. If you do like this video, please give it a thumbs up, comment on it, share it with your friends. And again, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, don't forget to subscribe, turn on the notifications bell, and check out my playlist of all different types of topics that can be related to your specific martial art needs. Hope that, again, this is informative. Thanks for watching, and take care.